right, welcome back to Top 5 Vinyl, where we show love to vinyl owners. Today I'm here with Tim. How's it going, sir?
It's going well. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Before we get started, I heard that you're into some kind of photography.
I am. I've been shooting live music for, I guess, since 2006.
Hmm.
And I write reviews occasionally too. I mainly do like indie rock and metal, but sometimes I'll do some big fests. I've worked for some fests in the past, like Psycho Las Vegas, and been working with the Desert Fest teams out in London and New York the past few years.
Hmm.
And I do writing for the Big Takeover. It's a punk rock magazine, or started as punk rock back. Geez, Jack's been doing it for over 40 years now.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it's been fun. It's good.
That's
And
pretty cool.
if people are curious, my website is Tinnitus Photography. Tinnitus being the affectation of ringing in the ears after being subjected to too much loud noise. So I thought that was pretty fitting.
Right.
Always wear earplugs. Earplugs are important.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'm on Instagram too as tinnitus_photo. I'm sure you enterprising people know how to use a search engine. So if you want to find it, you can.
And if you can't, I'll put it at the bottom of this description at the bottom of this page right here.
Right on.
There we
Cool.
go. All right, cool. Thank you for that, Tim. Before we officially get started, I want everybody to subscribe to the channel, like it, tell all your cool friends, all that stuff you guys got to do out there in YouTube land. With that being said, Tim, can you tell me if you remember the first vinyl record that you ever bought?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because that was one of the five I pulled out. So we
Mm.
can talk about it now, or I could wait until we get into the numerical countdown because
We'll
I
wait till
figured
we
that
get
was
there.
you got to start somewhere, and that seemed like the logical point.
Exactly. We'll wait till we get there. Okay, that's cool.
Okay,
Now, is that the original record that you
it
actually
is.
bought?
Yep, I
Okay.
bought it in I think maybe like 1976.
Wow.
So yep, still have it.
Nice. Okay. Growing up, was there a record player in the house?
Yeah, my dad had a stereo, and my brother did too. You know, just like I think he had a Gerard turntable and a Pioneer receiver. My mom didn't really listen to music at all. She played piano, so she liked some classical stuff, but
Mm.
she didn't like rock music. But my dad had the usual, like Doors and Santana, Doobie Brothers, stuff like that. My brother was more into like harder rock and southern rock. He was a big Skinner fan, Led
Mm.
Zeppelin, Stones, that kind
Mm.
of stuff. So that kind of shaped me on my musical journey.
Mm. All right. So, like, when you were a kid, was the record player on or off limits? Could you touch it?
I could touch it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My dad wasn't too anal about his collection. He didn't have a ton of records, but I was careful to like, not put scratches on there and take care of it because
Okay.
they aren't the most indestructible items, as I'm sure everybody knows.
Exactly. Yep. 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 Okay. Cool. Can you tell us about, do you have a favorite record store you used to buy vinyl from?
So I grew up in Springfield, Mass, out in Western Mass, and the shop that I would usually go, there were a couple. I think Caldor at the time was a
Mhm.
department store that sold records. Lechmere did, which is where I got the record that I was just mentioning, and then Strawberries was more like a specific music, focused store, and they had some good stuff. I would occasionally take a trip up to Northampton, and there was Main Street Records up there, which was a bit more esoteric. Some of the UK imports, some punk rock stuff. Had I known what I know now, I would have stocked up on my Misfits and Minor
Hmm.
Threat, 7 inches. But alas, those days passed, and I didn't take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm. If you had to guess, walking out of a vinyl store, can you think about the most amount of vinyl that you walked out with?
It's funny you mentioned that because it happened about maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I happened to be in Australia for my day job
Mm.
down in Melbourne, and I got to say, Melbourne had a pretty amazing selection of record stores.
Mm.
I was there for 3 weeks, so I had a regular sized suitcase and I brought a wheelie suitcase, and I ended up bringing that wheelie case full of records back. I think about like
Wow.
54 records, and
Wow.
one store called Round and Round. They mainly specialize in. They had a bunch of like krautrock and metal, stoner, indie rock, bunch of jazz, some soundtracks. I think I dropped like I don't know 5 or 600 US there.
Mm. Was that
So
intentional
probably
to bring the second suitcase?
well, my girlfriend put out here's another little plug. My
Mm.
girlfriend Allison put out a record from a band called Guided by Voices, tribute record, a bunch of
Mm.
different bands playing songs, and she released it on his birthday, which is Halloween of last year.
Mm.
And there were two bands that were on it who were from Australia, and I know a couple of the people. and so they wanted some extra copies to give to their friends.
Mm.
So I brought 10 copies of that record with me, which is one of the reasons why I brought that
Uh,
little wheelie case. And then I'm like, well, I have it, might as well fill it.
right, right. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if you like brought in like left clothes behind or something.
No, no, I actually did leave some old Vans behind because they were pretty beat up and I was running out of space. I had to buy a
Okay.
pair of hiking boots too, but that's a different story.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, cool. All right, Tim, well, being that this is top five vinyl, can you show me the fifth vinyl record that you have in front of you?
All right, we'll start with a little bit of a curveball.
Okay.
So this, I'll take it out of the plastic sleeve so there's no glare. This is a pretty strange record. This is a band record from Sonic Youth. You can see written in Russian.
Mm,
So Daydream Nation was kind of their big breakthrough hit. Teenage Riot was on MTV, and they got a bit more, profile lifting from that. And it was a double album. Well, for some reason, somebody in Russia bootlegged this album and truncated it down to a single record.
mm,
And it was kind of like I figured it was. I have the original record too, but I figured this was kind of like a weird novelty. And here it is.
mm. Nice. Okay. And also, let me ask you this before we get to number four. Have you seen any of your top five live perform live before? I said that wrong. Have you
I
seen
have
any of your top five perform
seen
live?
all but one.
Okay. Okay.
So as mentioned before, I do photography and I do see a lot of shows. So I am fortunate that I get comped a lot of tickets and it's yeah, there's been a lot of good live performances. Sonic Youth was always a fantastic live band.
Mm,
But they ran their course. But the other members are still doing their thing. I saw Lee Ranallo this past summer at Newport Folk. He was playing with a Native American group called Medicine Singers.
mm.
That was really cool.
Nice. Okay. All right, cool. So you saw your number five. Let's go ahead and take a look at your number four.
Okay, number four I've selected because it's a bit of an oddball. And I was thinking about like what's the rarest record I have?
Mm,
Not in terms of value, but like just in terms of like being able to find a copy.
mm,
So this is rather esoteric too. It's from a guy called Michael Morley, and he had a noise project, solo project called Gate. He's based out of New Zealand, and he's most well known as playing in a trio called the Dead Sea.
mm,
Dead Sea, they were kind of linked with Sonic Youth. Back in the '90s, when Sonic Youth played New Zealand, they'd open for them, and they played pretty much freeform kind of noise rock, just two guitars and a drummer, no
mm,
bass, no keyboards. Um, Michael sings in a bit of a monotone. It's certainly an acquired taste,
mm,
but they've got some good stuff. And the reason I took this record out, so I don't know if people in the on the channel are
mm,
familiar with lathe recordings.
mm,
So this is a lathe recording. It's handmade by Peter King out in New Zealand. They're basically very small editions, generally always under 100.
mm,
And
mm.
this one I got was number 10. I don't know if you can see it. 10 out
Yep.
of 20.
Wow. Okay.
When I was in New Zealand in 1995, I actually met Michael at a place called the Empire in Dunedin. Went to see some bands and he was there, and he invited my then wife and myself over to his flat the next day to have coffee, talk,
Mm.
hang out, just
Wow.
chill. And he had some records that he wanted to see if I was interested in buying. I'm like, yeah, I'll buy that. I'm never going
Mm,
to see another
mm.
copy, so sure.
Wow, that's pretty cool, man. Okay. So that was your number four. Let's go ahead and take a look at your number three.
Okay, number three. Number three is another bit of an oddball. So, jazz fans may know of the musician Sun Ra. So Sun Ra was very prolific, and
Mm,
this is a Saturn pressing of Uh, the satellites are inter or outer space ways incorporated.
mm,
He was on Impulse, he was on ABC, but Saturn was his own label back in the 50s and 60s. I'm not a huge jazz guy, but I do like a lot of the stuff on Impulse, ESP Disc, some of the more free jazz, like
mm,
Archie Shepp and Cecil Taylor and those type of guys. And
mm,
Sun Ra was obviously a big part of that movement. The thing that makes this record so unusual is that they usually only sold them at shows back in the like 60s and 70s.
mm,
They usually came with a hand painted cover. This one's just obviously white.
mm,
But I found it at Newbury Comics, which
mm,
is a chain in the Boston area
mm,
that at the time only sold new records. They didn't have any used stock.
mm,
and this record was in the bin. I have
Mm,
no idea how it got there, why it was there. I
mm.
figured Sun Ra gifted it to me from out in Saturn and said, "Here,
Right.
Tim, here's an original copy of one of my records."
That's
So
funny. Yeah,
thank you, Sonny.
they don't sell you stuff. You're right. That's very strange. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it was odd.
Okay. Congratulations. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So that was your number three. Let's go ahead and take a look at your number two.
Okay, number two. So I mentioned Robert Pollard before. So this is a Guided by Voices record.
Mm,
They were a lo-fi band out of Ohio. Pollard's story is an interesting one. He taught third or fourth grade. By the time he was 38, he's like, "Screw it! I'm going to pursue my dream of being a musician."
mm,
So he and his friends out in Dayton, Tobin Sprout, Mitch Mitchell, a few others, put out like three or four records to really no acclaim. And this was their last ditch attempt to like get some kind of recognition out in the greater world.
mm,
And it was a handmade record, cover sleeve. Each one was different. They made 500 copies, and this one is number 4 out of 500.
mm,
And I had Bob sign it a few years back. They go for thousands of dollars now. They're
mm,
basically like kind of like art pieces, along with being a bit of musical history. And the manager at the time did send some of these records out to press, and it did get the ball rolling. And then they started to get a more national profile. And then, Pollard's so prolific. He's got between GBV or solo projects, well over 100 albums.
mm,
So
mm.
if you dip your toe into the Robert Pollard universe, tread carefully because it's a deep one.
Noted. Okay. All right, Tim, and for the grand finale,
All right,
what
so
do
we
we
talked
have for
about
number one?
beginnings, and this is kind of where it all started out for me. By 19, like I said, I think I bought it in 76, so I think it's OG seam. The inner sleeve is
Mm,
split. It's seen some use, but this is a record from Blue Oyster Cult,
hmm
Secret Treaties, their third record. Um, a really important band for me. They weren't really a metal band, they weren't really a psychedelic band. They weren't really a hard rock band. They kind of spread their songs across all those music forms and others. They collaborated with authors like Michael Moorcock and Richard Meltzer to
mm,
write lyrics. All four or five band members contributed songs. It wasn't your normal like rock band. Okay, here's your singer. He has that role. Here's your guitar player. He does that. They had a lot of interesting aspects to their career, and
mm,
this was a really important record for me. Kind of set me on the path to like listen for weirder stuff.
mm. If you had to guess, what was the price when you bought that?
I was probably like it may have been one of those little nice price stickers. Might have been like $6 or something, $5.
That's great. Okay. All right, cool. Well, Tim, I want to thank you so much for your time and being a part of this journey with me.
Yeah, Harold, appreciate it. It's always fun talking about records. So, right on.
Absolutely. All right, cool. We'll talk soon, man.
Sounds good.
All right, have a good
All
one.
right, you too.